Welcome to Cure America. I'm Donald Eason, the president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education, and we have a great show for you today. I have two wonderful guests. I am just honored that they both could come our way here in Washington, D.C. To my right is Dr. Michelle Perro, pediatrician, certified pediatrician, and she's going to tell you more about herself. And to my left is Ruth Westreich of the Westreich Foundation. Did I say that right, Ruth?
It's close. You're getting
Close. I'm
closer.
not trying. And we were commissioned by Ruth to do this report. It's called The Weight of a Nation: The Crisis of Childhood Obesity and a Blueprint for Reforms. And that's what we're going to talk about on today's show, especially when we look at the urban community and the health crisis that's in the urban community, but not just in the urban community, across our nation. But before we do that, we're going to ask Dr. Michelle to introduce herself, and so you can know who she is. And we'll ask Ms. Ruth to introduce herself so you can know who she is. Because here's a question that you're going to ask. Why are two white women,
Older.
older white women, interested in helping the urban community and the health crisis that we have? And I think you're going to be pleasantly surprised at their background, what they tell us, and the reforms that we could put in place to help the health of our communities. So, Dr. Perro, could you tell us about yourself and what brought you to this fight we're in?
Of course, Donald, thank you for having us. We're so delighted to be here. And my journey starts with caring for children. I have come from, I'll share just a bit about my history, if you
Hmm.
don't mind. I come from a part of New York City called the Lower East Side, and now it's very upscale and very shishi. Back in the day, it was not so much. It was a little bit kind of West Side Story, a little rough and tumble. And lost my dad at an early age, single mom, and it was a bit of a struggle, and we had some challenges, but kind of got through all that. Educated at Yale University, went on to Mount Sinai, Bellevue trained, NYU. I was a pediatric emergency physician. And then what happened was, I've been practicing 44 years now. I learned about GMOs and pesticides, and I learned about the impact on children's health, which coincided with the rise of what I was seeing in children, essentially autistic spectrum disorder, autism, got my attention. Long story short, because I'd be here for a few hours, Donald, we'd have to move in here. I kind of pivoted my career to start to champion environmental health and food and what was happening to food and the impact on children. And then what happened in 2014, we started a nonprofit, GMO Science, gmoscience.org. That's the name of the organization. And what we looked at was a way to combat a lot of myths that were going on out there about GMOs and their associated pesticides not being healthy. That nonprofit still exists. I became the CEO with very generous support of Ruth Westreich. Thank you, Ruth. And I've been running that organization. I wrote a book several years ago with an amazing a medical educator from UCSF, Dr. Adams, called "What's Making Our Children Sick." The second book coming out. I can keep myself in a chair long enough to finish that book. It's almost done. But more importantly, why am I sitting here today with you and Ruth? Is because I'm so concerned about all of our children, not just some children, and particularly children where the reach is harder to get to, and really imparting our information of what we've learned over the decades, and it's been decades, about how we can change our cultural traditions to change our health. And that's all we're looking to do. It's pretty simple.
Well, thank you, Dr. Perro. And you're saying it's been decades, and we're going to talk about that in just a minute. And Ruth, could you tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in this fight and what brings you here today?
I I would be happy to, and thank you for having us, and thank you for agreeing and be open and willing to kind of hear what we had to say. It's a circuitous route, and then I'll tell you why I'm here
Okay.
and why I wanted to be a star and learn about Cure. But I grew up in South Central Los Angeles. Um, was at school in the 60s. It was during, some of the most horrific times, the Watts riots, all of this kind of thing. I was, my mother was widowed. My father died when I was 5 years old. she was sick. There was just she and I. So we actually became homeless, right? Which is not easy when you're 5 years old and don't have any place to sort of turn to. So we kind of struggled through that. And I thought, I have to be able to get myself up and out of here. I have to take care of my mother, this woman. And so I managed to do that. But what really has always stuck with me is that there were many people near where I lived that it was so generational with them, and that their lives would never change, which meant that the lives of their children would never change. And I knew then that I was going to need to be a voice for those people who didn't have a voice. I was just so deeply affected by like the human condition.
Mhm.
So fast forward the trajectory of my life. Um, I went to school, worked always, and met my first husband, who was a gastrointestinal surgeon in Los Angeles at what was then Cedars of Lebanon. And so I looked at his educate and keeping in mind that I come from a rural farming family in Arkansas. So no education whatsoever. Aunts and uncles could not read or write. Right. My mother had a third-grade education. I mean, this is not easy to navigate all of this. Um, and what I found out was that, he was very learned in medical school, but he didn't understand the body as a system.
Mm.
And he didn't get anything about nutrition in medical school. He didn't get anything about how to keep my children or me healthy. So the system is set up so that they're effective and needed when disease sets in. And I thought this is just not right for me. And so I was one of the very early people in the integrative medicine movement who wanted to see a change the way that we educate physicians, right?
Mm-hmm.
To more of a systems biology perspective, so that we could understand that if there is a disease, there's usually a root cause for it. And so I went along and was very successful in parlaying that integrative medicine movement to where it is. But like Michelle, I kept looking and thinking, this is not the entry point. This is not where we need to be, because we're doing more, but we're not healthy. We're not as healthy as we were when we weren't doing very much.
So could I say, am I hearing this right? So was that more disease care than healthcare?
Well, interesting that you say that, because I've had an interest in, all things healthful, and I have been a regent on colleges of natural medicine. And what I always wanted to do, I would like to have seen an ND-MD degree, right? A dual degree, because when you start out to be a naturopath, when you
Mhm.
start out to be a medical doctor, you learn almost exactly the same thing for the first 2 years. You can learn together. It could be interdisciplinary. After that, after the 2-year period, naturopaths go over here and figure out how to keep you healthy, look at root causes. And our current medical model is, we're going to fix you when something bad goes wrong with you. And we have the tools to do that because we know how to operate on you. We have a lot of pharmaceuticals that work very well. I'm not saying that that's not important, because in a lot of instances it is. And a lot of it should be acute care, right?
Right.
When you need it, it's there. And we do that better than anybody else in the world. But that's not fixing the problems that we have today. We are getting sicker by the day. Our children are getting sicker by the day.
Mhm.
So this model is not sustainable from a population standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from being on the global stage standpoint.
Mhm.
None of this is sustainable. And yet there's almost a refusal to look at this and dissect this problem, because we all have the tools to fix it.
Right. Okay. Okay. Well, that is a good starting point. First, I want to just go back to, you both shared your stories. and childhoods were not white privilege, right? And it's so I want the audience to know because there's this myth out here about all this white privilege. We're in a beautiful country. We're in America. We're free, but there are some things that need to be fixed, and one of them is our healthcare system, right? And I was reading the reports you sent me, and in medicine or food being medicine.
Yes.
Versus the pharmaceuticals and things of that nature. And so as we dive into this conversation, the weight of a nation and dealing with childhood obesity, I was looking through the reports. Children are dealing with fatty liver disease. They're dealing with
non-alcoholic fatty
liver disease, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure,
allergies.
and allergies. And so where do we begin to approach this, Dr. Perro?
Oh God, yeah. Thank God, my God, thank you. So we have to look at it from a root cause. Just to throw medication at a disease. Remember, diabetes wasn't always a disease. It used to be a condition, and now it's a disease. We have to go to the root cause. Where did this come from? Why are we talking about obesity in children? And I have to share that 25% of Black children now are obese. That is a national, not emergency, a crime. That's a national crime. Because along with that obesity goes hypertension. And we're talking about unheard of 40 years ago, 6 to 11% of children now have hypertension. We're talking about type 2 diabetes and actually type 1 diabetes. 2 times the number of Black children have diabetes than white children. These statistics are not okay. Whoever said these were okay. So why is this happening? We have to, and Western medicine does a terrible job. Western, conventional, mainstream, whatever you like to call it. Allopathic, many names. I'll call it Western for the sake of today's conversation.
Okay.
Do not deal with the root causes. Even our dear friend Secretary Kennedy and the Maha Commission report didn't dig deep enough. So what has happened over the past 50, 60 years that our diet has shifted? Now it has shifted to where mom used to be in the kitchen, mom went back to work in the 50s and the 60s, right? She went, and who came in to take her place? It's in the report. Swanson came in with TV dinners. Oh, I love those TV dinners. I'm going to be honest.
With the frozen peas.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Swanson, and then followed by KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken, came in the early 60s, targeting women. Ladies, you're working late tonight. Let KFC come in and make dinner for you. How lovely, right? And then McDonald's. So we got hijacked. Initially, those foods weren't horrible. Well, no, but believe it or not, they were actually not so bad. But then what happened is we introduced something called GMOs. And I won't get into that right away, but pesticides and an alteration of our food supply started happening. As we introduced this change in the actual genetics of our food with added pesticides to it, right? And not just one pesticide, at least 6 pesticides on the average food, the soil became unhealthy. And we have a tummy of microbes that are very synonymous with the soil. The soil not only filled these chemical toxicants, but didn't have enough nutrition to supply our brains. So kids they're overfed, undernourished. They're receiving a lot of food and they're hungry all the time because their bodies are not getting enough nutrition. And if you say like, oh, come on, what is this gal talking about? What does she mean? Well, let's look at one small thing. And our dear friend, Zen Honeycutt, Moms Across America, studied American school lunches. And she published some data in October of 2022. We were here in DC talking about it.
We were.
FDA, USDA, EPA, crickets, more crickets. And what she found was that school lunches with 30 million children eating those every single day, 93% had glyphosate, the main ingredient in our food, which is Roundup. 100% had toxic metals too. I know. I'm off on a tangent.
No, I want you to continue, but we're going to take a short break.
Okay.
Because what you just mentioned that our kids are eating Roundup or that Roundup is in their food.
Yeah, it's delicious.
We do want to hear more about that.
Okay, we'll get back to it.
And so we'll be back in just a moment. We're going to continue with Dr. Perro and what's going on in our schools' lunches. We'll be right back with Cure America.
Today, a student in public school will pray or lead a Bible study. Today, a pastor will preach boldly the truth of the Scriptures without fear of the IRS. Today, the life of an innocent child will be saved. and a mother will experience the joy of a newborn baby. A distraught woman will find hope and choose life rather than death. Today, there is a strong voice defending God's created natural order of marriage and family. There is a defender of freedom in the courtroom and in the halls of Congress and in legislative bodies across the land. Today, all of this is possible because of the ministry of Liberty Counsel. People from all over America will find help and hope because of Liberty Counsel. The adversity they face will be turned into victory, case by case, law by law, person by person. Liberty Counsel is advancing religious freedom, the sanctity of human life, and the family through litigation, education, and public policy. And that is the mission of Liberty Counsel, to restore the culture by advancing life, liberty, and family.
Welcome back to Cure America, and I am sitting here with Ruth Westreich and Dr. Michelle Perro, and we're going to continue our conversation on what's going on in childhood obesity, what's going on in the Black community. You said 25% of the Black community's children are obese, and so we're going to continue to talk about what's in our school lunches. And how do we fix it? How do we turn the corner and go in a different direction? And I know it's something bad, something going on, because I took a trip recently to Israel, and on the way back from Israel, I got thirsty and I wanted something to drink, and I went to the parlor to get something to drink, and they had a pop, we call it pop in Michigan, the North soda, and they said, well, we have juice, we have pop, but we don't have Diet Sprite. And I said, why don't you have Diet Sprite? Not that I wanted a Diet Sprite. They said we can't have Diet Sprite on the plane when we fly across Europe because of what's in it. And so now you're talking about what's in the school lunches. So can you continue with what's going on?
So I don't want to be Dr. Doom and Gloom here, okay? Because we are solution-oriented folks, and Ruth's favorite word is solutionaries, and we're going to get to that, Donald. So folks, hold tight. I don't want to think like, oh, nothing we can possibly do. But the school lunches were toxic. And some children who come from, impoverished families are eating not just one meal at school day, some two, and some even 3 meals a day. And they're getting the bulk of their nutrition from food that also is shown to be nutritionally bereft, didn't have the nutrients you need to run your brain. So when we even test children and we look at their nutrients, they're abysmally low. And most pediatricians are not trained in nutrition. I got 2 hours of med school, and I know that was the Stone Ages, but it's still 2 hours of medical school.
And they don't get much more now.
And no, there is just this dearth of knowledge that we are not being imparted about nutrition. It's not that pediatricians don't want to help; they're not trained to help. We get a year of pharmacology, though. I'll just be clear, but 2 hours of nutrition.
Wait, 2 hours of nutrition, a year of pharmacology.
Yes,
Okay,
yes, sir. That's correct. Yeah, I could be a pharmacist.
Right. Okay.
Well, actually, many physicians are pharmacists. That's where we're glorified pharmacists, but we don't want to be doing that. And so the first step is to get kids and families, right? And the family dog too, eating well. And that means moving away from these modified, pesticide-laden, ultra-processed foods to whole foods. And simply whole foods means, no, it's not the supermarket or whole paycheck. I'm not talking about that. What I'm talking about are veggies, fruits. If you eat meats, clean as meats you can, as best you can.
Chicken, most important.
And organic when possible. And then we can talk about organic. It's not just some hippie myth about organic foods. Let me put that on the side for a minute. But to change our diets, and one of the ways to do that is getting off the ultra-processed foods. And I don't know if you knew this, Donald, but 46% of American income is spent eating out.
Yes.
And if you're eating
No, I
out,
didn't know that.
Yeah.
it's half
Almost
your income.
50%. Okay.
Almost
10%.
Wow.
And it's not going to exactly be great food, okay? Because when you go to, let's say, Costco in the morning, you see all the restaurants buying their food, and it's not the best quality, let me tell you, because I used to do shopping for schools. It's a long story. But anyway, you see that this is what we have to address, is how we get those quality foods in our children's mouths.
Okay, so when we look at the quality food or the lack of the quality food, let's just say the lunches, what is a small step that a family can make to make that change? For example, if let's just say they are eating, their children are eating 3 meals a day at school in this inferior meal, right?
Mhm.
What is a small step that they can take? Because if at the rate that you just mentioned, they would have to eat a ton of that food to get the nutrition that they need. What is a small step that they could say? Do they eat, I don't know, a piece of chicken, or you mentioned vegetables? What is one thing that they can just do at home to make a difference in the nutrition?
Okay, one small thing they can do is if they can possibly increase some veggies in their children's diet. It's like, oh, my kid doesn't like veggies. Oh, I hear it all the time. Kids don't like veggies. Kids have very strong taste buds, way more sensitive than ours. And that changes with time, as we all know. So I'll give you one easy thing. So if you want to put broccoli is the superfood, eat more broccoli, right? Kids go, oh, broccoli. If you blended up, steamed that broccoli, if you blended it up and put it in, let's say the kid is having some macaroni and cheese. Let's just say clean macaroni and cheese, not the box kind. You could throw it in there and you could add broccoli to their food. And you say, my kid's not going to do that. Can you just get some extra fruits in their diet? Apple. An apple a day keeps the doctor away. The doctor's key, avoid the fruit. I know, guys, I'm just kidding. No, so I don't know how to,
I have heard that before. Okay.
I just had to throw that in. No, but can we find ways, instead of eating processed snacks or processed meals, simple substitutions? We're not asking to change even the way you eat, but if there are some foods that you eat in your family, can you substitute for a healthier version of that food? So if something can sit on the shelf for 2 years, I can tell you, and you have a list of 50 chemicals, like Lunchables, on Lunchables has 50 chemicals, 53 actually, I've counted on their label. You can imagine that that's not going to be healthy for your kid's tummy. And so we can possibly just do simple substitutions to already what you're eating. And that's a simple place to start.
You know, one of the things that we did is we brought you 4 or 5 cookbooks,
Mhm.
right? Cookbooks, because my roots are Southern, and so you know, food is, and the culture of food has been so important, so important, and so there's ways that you can still keep that sort of Southern tradition, all of the foods that we have loved so much, and make them healthier. So we brought cookbooks so that you can start to see that. Um, I agree with Michelle. There's many, many ways that you can integrate foods that because the ones your children, and this is really interesting. Like my daughter, my grandkids grew up with my daughter, who is like the food Nazi. Um, so they
I
had
have a daughter
never,
like that.
so they had never eaten sugar. So you could give them anything to eat and they like lapped it up, right? My grandson's first meal was kippers. Okay. Kippers is like a fish stunk like gangbusters. This kid absolutely loved it, right? By the time the fourth one came, he had a couple of tastes of sugar. That went out the door. So something happens to you when when you start giving them sugar and all of these other things are not appealing anymore. So, but you can take the things, like you can take avocados, you can take peas, and you can blend them up. You can put them in all kinds of things. You can put them in spaghetti sauce. You can put them in hamburgers, chili, right? You can get them in that way. So there's many really interesting ways that you can get. In fact, my daughter makes avocado ice cream. Okay. So it tastes good. It looks like baby poop. It's
Avocado ice.
avocado ice cream.
Well, can I add a little sidebar in there, Don? Do you
Okay.
mind? Quickly.
Absolutely.
So because as Ruth was talking, I triggered something, a piece of information a lot of people don't know. And that's that pregnancy state.
Mhm.
What mom eats during pregnancy shapes the taste of children. So, for example, there was a study that came out that for moms who drank alcohol during pregnancy, I'm not recommending alcohol during pregnancy, the babies acquired a taste for alcohol. If moms eat healthier during pregnancy, lots of veggies, fruits, it's so important that mom eats well during pregnancy. Those babies acquire the taste for those foods and are more likely to uptake them when they're introduced. Now,
Wow.
that includes sugar.
Right.
And you want to avoid those sugar products. Natural sugar is fine in an apple and grapes, and so even veggies have sugar. Peas and kale, they have sugar.
Yeah.
You want to avoid processed sugar. Those are fine when sugars avoid.
Oh, that's great information. And I want to go back to, we mentioned about, adding, just making some simple changes. You mentioned broccoli. My daughter loved broccoli, actually. When she was a little kid, the doctor said, I'm giving you some broccoli. She was like, oh yeah. So it's what you said. When you introduce them to it, they have an affinity for it. But I want to take a step back and go back to something you said in your introduction, Ruth. And you mentioned how you grew up, and you were married to a doctor, and
Yes.
and it's and you had to change the diet. So that goes to the same question I asked Dr. Perro. What did you do to change the diet so you can have healthier living? So
Well,
because that's what our audience, they need to make those changes, and you have a practical experience with them.
as I say, I was a gastrointestinal surgeon. He only knew what he knew. Got nothing in nutrition. He actually went back and did a family practice residency because he wasn't geared. But from day one, he didn't eat any vegetables. He didn't eat anything that was red or anything that was green. I'm like, oh my! So my kids come along, and right away, I'm like, this is not sustainable. So I am now cooking 2 meals because, again, I looked back at my family, my family of origin, and I'm the only one that's left living because if they all fell into that, chronic body inflammation with heart trouble, structural trouble, arthritis, diabetes. I mean, you name it. And it's mostly not genetic. That's mostly diet and lifestyle oriented.
Okay.
And I just didn't want that for myself and my kids. So I broke away and I started studying, like, what is the best things that I can give my children and myself. So I ended up cooking, you know, literally 2 meals all of this time. So it wasn't his fault. And
Right.
he couldn't counsel people on that because he absolutely didn't know. And it was probably one of the things that was the most difficult for me is because here he is, a sort of God syndrome kind of a thing. And I am this lowly person from, the ghetto. And what do I know? So it was a constant push me, pull you. And, he never did learn.
Oh wow.
He
Wow.
wasn't willing to learn.
And that's why I wanted you to tell us your story, because it will take people time to make these adjustments, these changes. And since we're talking about children, it's easier to, as Frederick Douglass said this, it's easier to train up children than to fix broken men. And so
Oh, I'm gonna have to
You
use
have
that
no
one.
idea how true that is. You have no idea how true that is. Let me say this.
yes.
Before he passed away about eight years ago. Before he passed away, he had had 2 coronary bypasses.
Mm.
He had diabetes. He had so many structural issues. He couldn't walk. He was in a wheelchair. What else could you have? Oh, dementia. I forgot dementia. So this poor man, and he never once related it back to anything about his diet. And he never exercised. He didn't understand that, you have to feed your body, you have to move your body. If you don't do either one of those things properly, the body thinks it's going to die, and it does.
And that is why this conversation is important. I'm going to the Bible real quick. God made Adam and Eve in a garden. Right? Not in a building, not behind the desk, in a garden with all the great vegetables, all the great fruit. And because they're in a garden, they have to work, they have to use their body. So, what you just said, exercise and eating properly. I used to tell my children this when they were younger. I said, there's nothing written that says you have to grow old and fall apart.
That's nothing.
There's nothing written.
Nothing.
We do have a choice, and that's why we're having this conversation. And we're going to continue on with the conversation with Dr. Perro and Ruth on dealing with childhood obesity, dealing with the health crisis that we have in our country, and what can we do to fix it. And you can see there are baby steps that we need to take, and we'll be right back with another conversation on what we do next. Welcome back to Cure America. Again, I am Donald Eason, the president of the Center for Urban Renewal and Education. We're continuing our conversation with Dr. Michelle Perro, certified pediatrician, and Ruth Westreich from the Westreich Foundation, who commissioned our report, The Weight of a Nation, the Crisis of Childhood Obesity, a Blueprint for Reforms. And join us in our conversation is Pastor Steve Perry, good friend of mine out of Detroit, Michigan.
Hey, y'all.
Perry.
Hey, y'all.
We are honored to have Pastor Perry on our show, and we're going to continue the conversation. And we left off. The question is, why are we here? And we talked about inflammatory diseases, and it's all associated with our food. So let's answer that question. I mean, why are we here today?
I'll tell you why I'm here.
Okay.
I've been working with children, looking for doing research on some of the root causes for the chronic conditions in children and adults. And that's kind of the entry point of all the things I've done. That's where I've ended up. That this is what we need to look at, because if we don't look at this, all of the other things that we're doing, it's like putting lipstick on a pig. Yeah. It just isn't working, because everything we're doing. And so I was listening. One day I was listening to Yanya Kellogg at the Epic Times, and I heard Star Parker be interviewed. And I was dumbfounded. I thought, oh my God, this is a smart woman. Oh my God. And then I started looking and researching what you guys were doing. And I thought, oh my God. But throughout her whole interview, and I heard her twice, she never mentioned the health. She never mentioned that piece. And I thought, without that, if there's not an understanding of that, then all the things that you are doing, you can't be successful. Yeah. So I just started calling around. I got her. I called the office. I got her, and I said, I need to come to Washington. I need to talk to you. And she probably thought, who is this woman? Okay, who is this woman? So I came. We had a wonderful discussion. I just sort of planted the seeds, like little droppings, saying, I love what you're doing. I think that your mission is right on. I think that going through the clergy is the best way that you can be successful and make inroads with this. And I feel like I get called to do things, all right? And I felt like I was called to be there to sort of intervene at that piece. And she went over it, and she finally called me back. She goes, oh my God, you're right. She goes, without this, we won't be as successful. And that's kind of when it started. And I said, I feel like that I'm here to help you, because I just know that what you're doing is important. It's a big piece, and I want to help you be as successful as you can. But if these people are not healthier, especially young people that are in school, it is not going to happen. And that just started this whole trajectory of things. And you've been so cooperative. And then I met you, and you had this wonderful understanding already, right? So here we are. There you go.
Well, we certainly appreciate all the support you've given us here at Cure, and health goes to our core values of faith, freedom, and personal responsibility. And personal responsibility is critical to our health. No one is going to take care of us better than we are, right? And it starts with our food. And you were mentioning about inflammation and some of the things that have been caused by our food, and then we're going to shift it to Pastor Perry.
I want to dovetail on what Ruth said, and she said it so eloquently. Thank you, Ruth. And when Ruth and we've been in partnership and on the periphery, marginalized. And when Ruth speaks, I listen and to what she's offering. And when she mentioned Cure to me, I learned about this amazing organization through it. And I said, I'm in. And why am I in? I'm a pediatrician. I love children. And to Ruth's point, it's not a career for me. It's a passion and a calling, right? It's because I got goosebumps just saying that, because I will battle to the end for a child. And I've taken on Oakland Children's Hospital. I've taken on Metropolitan Hospital. I've taken on Bellevue over issues. And when it comes to our kids, I'm just sort of furious. And that's the way I was designed. I was made that way.
She's a warrior.
So, but the other reason I'm here, other than loving kids, is because in my career lifetime of 44 years, since 1982, I've been practicing, I've seen a dramatic change, shocking change.
Like a hockey stick.
Criminality from healthy children to the state of our children's health right now. And it's Black children's, white children's, brown children's, yellow, it's all colored children. And we've gone, so when I wrote that book I mentioned before, What's Making Our Children Sick, 54% of our kids were sick. I did those few statistics just to show you I'm legitimate.
Yes.
By the way, you say this woman's not legitimate. No, I'm legit. And now, since that book was written in 2017 on data from 2012, post-COVID, that number is close to 63%.
Can you imagine?
It's not what Maha Commission reported of 40%.
No.
It's a third higher than that. So we now have an epidemic of sick children. And it's what we've talked about Black children. It's all children, obesity, hypertension. We talk about diabetes. We talk about behavioral issues. We talk about asthma. Asthma in Black children, oh my goodness, it could be anywhere from 1 in 5 to 1 in 9 kids. It is common, serious, now autoimmune disease, allergies, sleep disorders, and again,
learning disabilities.
I'll get back to the behavior and learning, and schools are seeing this, and we're not listening to our teachers. So if I'm seeing this in my lifetime, what the heck is going on? And a lot of the arrows point to the multiple culprits. Food being a big one. Children eat 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times a day. Baby 6, because I know we have a few. I can give a toddler class.
Yeah.
They're eating a little more often. And some of us don't need to be eating that often, I'll just say. But food and environmental toxicants. I say toxicants because toxins are organic, toxicants are chemical. And that's what's driving the epidemic of diseases that we're seeing now. It's literally a chronic assault on our children's health via poisoning. We're chronically poisoning our youth to where we are now. And this is reversible.
Yes.
We can change this.
Well, I'm looking forward to talking about those solutions. And we do have a problem with food in America. And I'm saying it this way because, I go into Lowe's, and when you get to the checkout counter, it's all kind of candy and soda and chips. And so someone says, "Where do I find a candy bar?" They come from another country. I said, "Go to Lowe's."
Right there.
So that's what's going on in our country. And we brought in Pastor Steve Perry from Detroit because Pastor Perry, we just want to thank you first of all for being here, being a part of our show. And we will be coming your way to Detroit to do a community roundtable, pastor roundtable, and talk about these health issues. And I know your wife is a pharmacist, right?
Yes.
So what can you share anything that you're seeing, whether in the community or in the church family, in terms of health and what we're talking about here today?
Yeah, so I just love this conversation. So I'm a pastor in Detroit. I actually pastor 2 churches in the Detroit area, one in the suburbs and one in the inner city. And even as you guys are talking, I was listening to Charlie Kirk yesterday talk about this marijuana issue, and in the modern times with that. And so I'm this is personal, predominantly because I know the more weed people smoke, the hungrier they get. You have a huge autism issue that's going on. And the only reason I'm saying this is because I'm thinking about the bigger picture in the urban areas. It's connected to drugs, it's connected to food, it's connected to a lot of different things. And so my aim as a pastor is, how do we use the gospel to help people in their everyday lives?
Mm-hmm.
How do we use the gospel to challenge them to do right? And the Bible tells us that our body is a temple. A lot of the things that you all discuss, most people don't even know that they're being poisoned by food. And then when you think about most of the poisons, it makes sense to go to inner city because you can't afford vegetables. You can't afford, and then even though the government might give you food stamps and stuff like that, you already have a sugar addiction. You're already addicted to, and you have cravings for a lot of these things that's really not good for you. Case in point, I was just sharing with them earlier, I've been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, which I know is completely reversible. But I remember a period of my life, I wouldn't pick up a water. I just wanted soda, in particular Pepsi. I love Pepsi. And at one point, I was drinking 2 liters of Pepsi a day. Yes, I was. I was.
Still alive.
Yeah. At one point,
4 2-liters.
4 2-liters. Yeah, 4 2-liters. And then I was 375 pounds and was trying to figure out why was I that big. Okay. But I put away the soda for a year and I had wound up losing like just 80 pounds off of no soda.
Wow.
Just no soda. And so so I've gotten a lot better, in that I probably have 1 carb a day. That's just because of my addiction, but I'm getting better.
We're not gonna hold it against you. We're not gonna hold it-
You know, but
told him I was coming
yeah.
lovingly
Oh no, you okay. You okay.
to his congregation.
Yeah.
We'll be there. Yeah.
And so as I think about those numbers and a lot of the things that you all are saying, your help is drastically needed in a place like Detroit and Chicago and Toledo, predominantly for information. So that people can make better choices and decisions with their food. I have a wife that's a pharmacist, man. She don't stop talking about stuff, oh no, this is this, that, and this. And I got y'all on here too, so I feel like I'm double trouble right now. But but you all are most definitely right. There's a better way to do it, and I'm glad that the Lord had called you all to this, to be passionate about it and to fight your way in terms of making sure we get all the information we need so we can make better choices.
Thank you. And I was in Detroit about probably 5 years ago. I was so impressed with, and I think that's probably what started me thinking about all of this, because you're if you're so far removed from it, you were under the impression that, that urban blight and poverty and food deserts, that they're not solvable. And that's not true.
That's not true.
I looked and saw what was going on in Detroit, where you had all of these old vacant lots, and they were now community gardens. You had support from the clergy. You had support from the community. I mean, you all came together
Yep.
to make these changes, and so that's possible.
Yep.
And that's, I think, what we want to get is that this is not a top down issue,
Yep.
right? This is from the ground up.
Yep.
Like, there is nobody going to come in and do this for you. You're
Yep.
going to have the will to do it yourselves, and you do it in community,
That's right.
right? And you do it because you want to look out there and you want to see a future for your children and your grandchildren.
That's right.
Could I add on something, 2 points that you brought up, Pastor Perry? Something you said, that addiction of yours that you had to that soda.
Yep.
The companies create those addictions. They call it the bliss point. They
Yes.
add palatants, what they call palatants or palatants in there, such as salt, fat, and sugar, certain ratios that your brain craves those
Right.
chemicals.
Right.
And we have created addictions of soda, sugar, candy. And it actually takes, when people come off those foods, it can take a few weeks to remove the addiction because the cravings can be so strong.
Yeah.
And I've seen it even with things with foods that contain gluten, like wheat breads. I've had people say, Dr. Perro, come off bread? I love bread. They're right. It's a chemical reaction. They do love bread because the bread releases certain chemicals that act like opiates in their brain, and they crave it. That was one point I wanted to share. And of course, the community gardens, this is a solution based, and we love what Detroit is doing in terms of that. And we're happy to share and participate in that. But there are ways that communities get involved. It's better to do it in community,
Absolutely.
in your congregation, faith-based.
Absolutely.
And the most successful organizations are like La Leche League for breastfeeding, AA for Alcoholics Anonymous,
Yeah.
Weight Watchers. There are, cancer support groups. So we know there are better health outcomes when it's often done in community. So you don't feel
Absolutely.
like you're doing it alone.
That's right.
It's a team.
Right.
And that's what we're going to discuss in our next segment. Thank you, Pastor Perry, for sharing that story. I had no idea. 4 2-liters of Pepsi a day, that's a lot.
I've lost a lot of weight.
And so we're going to talk about how to reverse it, how you mentioned earlier, and you've been you're a prime example of it, right? Just stopping drinking soda or pop. I like to call it pop. That's from Detroit, right? And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to reverse it, and we're going to talk about what is some things they're doing in Detroit right now.
Yep.
And then we'll be visiting Detroit later on this year. So we'll be back shortly here at Cure America. Stay tuned. Welcome back to Cure America. We've been having a hearty discussion, and we're going to continue this discussion. I think hearty is the right word.
That was such a good. I love that word.
And we're going to we talked about community, and we talked about we're going to talk about how to reverse some of this that's going on. And before we do, I just want to mention a report that you sent to me about what's going on in the city like Detroit. Detroit has they're transforming vacant lots into community gardens. And just for example, they launched it in 2003, a garden resource program, and right now they have grown up to today over 1,500 gardens and 25,000 gardeners. That's what's going on in the Detroit area, has been going on. And so as we talk about reversing this and the community being involved, can you give us a little bit of how that will how we can do that?
So the first place to begin the transition is in your kitchen.
Okay.
Let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. And, we didn't say it. Hippocrates said that. I don't know if Hippocrates really said that, but
He said something like
he
that.
said something like it. And when I say to the Latina communities, la cocina es tu medicina, the kitchen is your medicine. So don't read for the pill bottle. No offense to your wife, but maybe we can reach for some of that celery sticks. But how do we begin? And so it has to begin. Someone's got to get back in the kitchen. Now, notice I didn't say mom in the kitchen. I didn't say mom, somebody. And that includes the parents, whatever the family looks like, grandparents, mom, dad, the children.
Mhm.
Why can't children get in the kitchen? They sell children-friendly knives, and boys love knives. They love chopping. Get those kids chopping. And full disclosure here, when my kids were little, I didn't have my kids in the kitchen. Why? Because I didn't want a messy kitchen. Oh, I don't know what I was thinking. Times would be different now. This was many decades ago. My kids are all grown up. So you get the kids in the kitchen, get them baking, get them dirty, get them making the food with you. You want to teach them thoroughly. And I'm not saying be some high-end chef, Julia Childs or Alice Waters here. I'm saying some basic food prep. I know families are working and families are busy. One tip. So on Sundays, I work full time. My husband worked full time. What we would do is we would cut all the fruits and vegetables. Well, I did it. Okay, me and my husband. He was out, doing whatever he was doing. And I was in the kitchen, but cutting the fruits and vegetables, prepping for the week.
Yeah.
And I'd have everything cut up, and I would make a few meals on my day off. On Saturdays off, and I would have a few meals ready to go. So that during the week, I wasn't doing a takeout. I was doing I could at least have a stock of soup. I would have often some rice dish and often some bean dish. Beans are one of the healthiest things you can give your family. That would be one tip. The second tip I can say, and I know this is a stretch, and we didn't talk about it too much on this segment, but when you can, is to get organic food. And you say, oh, come on, where I live, it's really nearly impossible. And I know
Or natural.
it's a stretch.
Or all natural.
All natural. Now, that natural word that Ruth is mentioning has been bastardized somewhat. Everything is natural. So, but if you see that green and white label, if you can get organic, Costco carries organic, Trader Joe's carries, Sprouts carries. And I was looking at some of the prices in Sprouts, for example, organic. I'm price conscious because I grew up with a welfare mom. Organic can of beans is just maybe 10 cents more than the regular beans. So I think it's $1.29. So, and you can probably stretch those beans. And here, I'll give you one sample. In our area, a preschool where I live was giving the kids, goldfish and God knows what else, processed foods or snacks. We went in there and said, can you go switch an organic diet for a school for 100 kids? And they said, it's too expensive. I said, what if we went food shopping with you and we showed you that we can do it? And they said, yeah, right. Okay. We went on a field trip. We went food shopping. We did the food prep. We came in under budget.
Wow.
Yeah. It's a myth.
It's a myth. But processed foods cost a lot of money, but we had to be in the kitchen prepping it. And so I've had young people tell me, I don't know how to do this. I told my young kid who knew how to do fermented food like sauerkraut. Fermenters so healthy for you. I didn't know how to make sauerkraut. So easy. And my young kid said, Mom, YouTube it. But, snitty 16, Mom, I did. And I said, oh my God, so easy. And I learned how to do it on YouTube. Everybody's got a phone, like almost everybody. If you don't have one, your kid has one. Get on YouTube, learn how to make some simple recipes. And so these are the simple things I do. And whenever you can eat fermented foods, please include them in your diet. Sauerkraut is probably one of the healthiest things you can eat, even though it may not be part of our natural diets. Eating sauerkraut or eating kimchi or eating, kefir or fermented soy like tempeh. We live at a time and a place now where we can get those foods. And so this is what I'm suggesting is that we have a food cultural revolution and bringing back foods that we grew up eating, making adjustments, and even trying some new foods that weren't part of our original diets.
You know what? And I definitely agree with you. But for, anybody that's working, time is so precious. And you think of coming home and, oh my God, I've got to cook this big meal at night. But as Michelle said, if you take time and you make it a family thing and you do your chopping, then you keep it in the refrigerator. And I like to do, what I like to do is I will have all of the components in the refrigerator and then I'll figure out all different ways to do them. But I'm like very big in kind of stir fries. You can, with quinoa and things like that, you can just throw it all in. You can stir fry it up. It's really, really good. It takes like what, less than 10 minutes if you've already done your little chopping. But I agree with you. Like I train my children and then my grandchildren, like they were the first ones on their block to stand on a stool with the big kitchen knife and, do one of these things, right? And they're still doing it.
Yep.
I mean, they're still doing it. It just came naturally to them.
Yep.
So there are ways to do this. And the myth that has been perpetuated, like you can't eat healthy if you're poor, is just bull.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely bull. And so we want to counter that. And I think that's why Detroit is so interesting, is that they have taken that on. And I will guarantee you that I've seen those community garden plots. I mean, you can feed so many people out of the stuff that is coming out of there. There's got to be enough to sell also. So that you have to be able to generate revenue that way too.
Yeah.
And the other thing is that you don't have to go to Costco. You can find farmers markets.
Yeah.
There's a farmers market near you, I guarantee you.
Yep.
And the selections that they're going to have are going to be good. And the reason I put natural in there is because not every small farmer can get the certified organic label. They can't do it. You have to jump through hoops. You have to do all kinds of things. But if you have a small farm and you are not spraying, you are not using genetically modified, Roundup ready seeds, the stuff that you're growing is pretty damn healthy.
Yeah.
Right?
That's right.
And I'm okay to eat that. I don't have to have a certified organic.
Yeah. And also in California, if you're on SNAP, which is a food assistance, they take SNAP to farmers markets and they'll give you double the price of your SNAP.
Yeah.
So you can get double
Right.
the fruits and veggies
Right.
Oh, wow.
in
Okay.
California. And so that's something that maybe that Michigan governor of yours wants to take on.
Yes.
That'll be good. So I just want to recap, as we try to reverse this process, you said, kitchen, get in the kitchen is a medicine. Back in the kitchen, whether that's mom, dad, children, everyone get back in the kitchen and begin to prepare our own food. You mentioned eating organic or natural. So natural food. You also mentioned, if you don't know how to do it, you can go on YouTube.
Absolutely.
Get educated. So, because
heart surgery from YouTube.
So education is really what we're talking about. It's
right.
it's the process. Steve and I both being pastors, we know what we can do is we can give people the information. But after we give them the information, they're responsible for what they do with that information.
Yeah.
And so that's really what we're here for. And then I have a question when it comes to that, because I like to eat. We all like to eat. But you know what? How do we determine in portion sizes? Because we can I like to
Go to
eat
the
it.
plantation.
Because there are and there may be some foods that we can eat, and it doesn't matter about the portion size. But on general, how do we determine the portion size of what is that?
Well, there's so many portions you should be eating in servings per day of a food. And so, for example, we're supposed to eat 9 servings of veggie a day. Now, I can tell you most Americans are not even close to getting 9 servings a day. But let's talk about portion size. Honestly,
Okay.
you're not going to overeat veggies. Eat as much salad and broccoli and cauliflower and okra and with all the veggies you want. You're not going to OD on
Okay.
the veggies.
And that's what I wanted to get to right there.
But remember, the myth was when soup plantation came around, right?
Uh-huh.
And there was like, this is so healthy. You could go and eat, you could eat all you want. So people would go in there, and I mean, they would come out with these mounded plates like this, with poured like all of these dressings and things on them. No.
So the food pyramid is not actually quite right.
No, it's not.
And so the original person who created that food pyramid, by the way, she was edited by industry. So it shifted. But anyway, so you want to eat a lot of that, less fruit, because fruit has a lot of sugar.
Right.
Meat portion is per weight, your size. And if you are a meat eater, you want to get quality meat as best you can. And you say, it's so expensive to get free range, grass-fed, grass-finished meat. That's the gold standard. And so at least if you can get organic meat, people say, I can't afford organic meat. Are you kidding me? I said, if you can get the bone, go to an organic and just buy the beef bone and make a bone broth soup, that's even healthier than the meat. But I digress. So meat and other proteins, meat's not the only source of protein.
No.
There's certainly fish. There's nuts and seeds have protein. Eggs are one of the best foods. And when you put certain foods together, they make a complete protein, like rice and beans together, make a complete protein. So, and then the last thing you want to be eating a lot of are carbohydrates.
Right.
So these are called your macronutrients, proteins, fats, and carbs. Carbohydrates, some are good, but too many of those is where we start to put on the pounds. And for many people who've lost weight, that many successful diets were ketogenic or low carb diets, not forever, but those can help you because the carbs require release of insulin to take up all that sugar from your pancreas. And you don't want that constant release of insulin and sopping up the sugar. So lower the carbs, and carbs are basically all that stuff that tastes good, the breads, the crackers, the potatoes.
Pasta.
All the stuff we love, right?
Pasta, the corn.
Sugar.
It's the stuff that's broken down quickly in your body, the sugar. So those should be the lowest on your food intake. And sometimes my last tip, because I go on a little bit about this, if you feel hungry, before you reach for food, drink some water. And then if you're still hungry, try an apple first. Chances are you're not going to eat 5 apples. I'm just telling you. Maybe you'll have 1 or 2 and you'll be good. So always start with water. Americans do not drink enough water. Drink water and then see if you're still hungry.
I want to thank you, Dr. Perro. Those are great tips. And before we close out, I just want to thank all of our guests today. Pastor Perry, thank you for coming over to Detroit.
Yeah.
And sharing your story with us. And we're looking forward to being in Detroit real soon. Ruth Westreich Foundation, thank you so much for your support of this mission as well.
I'm totally in.
Thank you for, and I know your travel here was not as fun as you'd like it to be, but thank you for making it. and Dr. Michelle Perro, thank you so much.
My pleasure, and I like to think we're in it to win it.
That's right. Absolutely, we're in it to win it. We want to thank you again for joining us here on Cure America and our outstanding panel that we had today. And it's so much more we can talk about, and we're looking forward to continuing these conversations. But remember, as we depart, in all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. And God bless you. Thank you again for joining us on Cure America. And I'd like to say this also, thank God there's a cure.